I had the mistaken notion that I had to do something completely new, not building on my father's legacy. I had to build up our own story. And I found that's also not biblical. We're born into a story, and we continue that story. So that gave me the confidence to kind of step back into the story and use the story as a platform to build something extraordinary, what you see here. For me, it was very difficult at the beginning to talk about the story. I felt like I was bragging. I felt like I was showing off. The Cade family was never supposed to show off, and talking about Gatorade was showing off. I realized that by hiding the story and not using it for the benefit of the community was actually burying my talents out of fear. I was afraid. I was afraid what people would say. Oh, you're just riding on your dad's coattails, etc., that type of story. It's a miracle that God healed my heart, healed the wound, and now the wound is not an open, gaping wound, it's a scar. There is a scar, but you should only minister from your scars, never your wounds. So God had to heal me. And then part of it was asking God to show me, not just with cities, but with people and institutions. Show me, Lord, how you see that person or the institution, and give me the same heart you have. And that completely changed how I saw things.
When we left, there's not anything about this town that I want to be here for. That was my attitude. By now, my oldest is 6. I got a 2-year-old and a newborn. And we moved back to Atlanta, and I went back into consulting and became a partner in a consulting firm, and things were great. Inside, though, I knew that I had kind of walked away from what God called me to do. 8 years later, the Lord was like, are you going to do what I told you to do or not? And at first I was like, or not. Like, I'm just not. But independently, unsolicited, my wife comes to me and says, hey, Greg, I do not want to die. Stand before the Lord and know that we did not do what he called us to do. I think we got to move back to Gainesville. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right.
So when my father asked in 2004, 3 years before he died, if my husband and I would help do this museum idea. He'd had an idea for a museum for decades and never acted on it. I had no idea what I was saying yes to. But my husband and I both said, of course, we will help you and we will make it a great museum.
And initially we talked to consultants. The consultants made it sound very easy. You know, you just, you have a little fundraising diagram, and you put at the top, you know, your $1 million donor and then your 2 $500,000 donors, and you hire an executive director, and, you know, you're basically done. And so we thought, well, you know, that'll take maybe 3 years. We can do that. But as she got more into it and just setting up the structure and the vision and all those things, by 2009, you know, 5 years later, we realized this was going to be much more difficult, but it was still a worthy vision. We felt like by then we had locked onto this vision of really being about not necessarily trying to create the next Gatorade, but try to support inventors and entrepreneurs like that could create a brand new idea out of nothing that would ultimately change the world.
So one very surprising thing to me and to my husband in taking on this role of founders was how difficult it is sometimes, just because we come from a background of wealth and privilege and a story, and people assume, oh, it's easy for you. My parents did set up an endowment for the museum, but it covers only 20% of our cost. So that means we have 80% that we need to do through ticket sales or fundraising. But I get rejected quite often, and in the beginning it was super hurtful. I would be hurt because everyone came to me looking for help, but they didn't want to help here. And I started really meditating on the life of Jesus. What does it mean to follow him? He gave up everything for everybody, but it's not necessarily acknowledged, and people don't help, and they're critical. So it's like, if we're following and living out the gospel, we shouldn't be surprised. And I pray all the time, Lord, send the people that need to be a part of this project. And he does.
We ended up back here in Gainesville. I've had times where I've made more money. I've had times where I've had more responsibility in an organization. I've had times where, title and privilege and things that we experienced in Atlanta were much greater than they are here. But I've never had a time in my life that I felt more at peace about what I'm doing. Like, I know without a shadow of a doubt that this is where God called us to be. And it wasn't until we got back here that the pieces started coming together for Mirror Image Leadership Academy. Like, the thought was always there, but until we stepped out and planted ourselves here, then the wisdom and the understanding and the know-how started coming, and the relationships and the connections started coming to be able to see this come to fruition. So every experience that I've had in life, it has culminated itself in what I'm doing now, which is helping to provide opportunity to young men who look like me to have exposure, to see things that they've not been able to see. And I would not have been able to do that without the experiences, the pain, the setbacks, the accomplishments that I've had in my personal life. Because somewhere between your dreams and the things that give you righteous indignation is probably your purpose.